Do you know the event that this shirt commemorates? Today is the 13th of May, the anniversary of the day in 1985 when an American city dropped C4 on its own citizens. This is what it looked like in a neighborhood in Philadelphia 2 days after the bomb was dropped. Keep in mind they were going after one of these houses in the middle here, and they let the fire burn, consuming 61 homes and leaving more than 250 citizens homeless, most of whom completely unrelated to the people that they were after. This day, this event is what I think of whenever anyone says that our government wouldn't do something. Because the answer is always, yes, the fuck they would, and yes, the fuck they have, to someone. Probably an indigenous person, or a black person, or some person of color, somewhere, at some point. If not repeatedly, many times throughout American history. Remember, this was 1985. This was during my lifetime. This was not long ago. The group that the feds targeted, and yes, it was the Philadelphia police, but like, if you think they did this without the blessing of the feds, like, come on. The colonized mind will have you going, well, what did they do to deserve it? There must be some reason. Stop yourself. No, there was not ever a good reason to drop C4 on a bunch of American citizens and then let the fire burn out the rest of the neighborhood. Now, here's where intersectionality comes in. Okay. And we're having a lot of problems with understanding like how all different identities are always linked and you can't separate out one or the other, but that's a different conversation. But you've heard about Waco and things like that, right? And you've heard about some of these other situations where it ended up in state violence against the group. But even though this happened in like one of the biggest cities in the country and was like really, really well known, and like they dropped a bomb on a city neighborhood, like that should be really newsworthy and historical, but it's not. And largely because these people were black people. And it's very easy for folks to look aside from things that happen to black people and to blame us for things that happen to us, no matter what those things are. When the crimes of America are mentioned, always think about the 13th of May, 1985. That is a day that should remind you that whenever the state wants to, it will do the worst kind of violence against its own citizens. And that's you. Even if you think it doesn't involve you right now, maybe it doesn't involve you right now, but it could. And eventually it will. One of the most important axioms of like living in the world today for me is whatever you allow to happen to someone else could happen to you. I always go back to the 13th Amendment for this because now lots of white folks are getting a taste of how easily you could get caught up in the carceral system and essentially, legally, according to the 13th Amendment in the Constitution that governs our country, be a slave. And from how the cops behaved at Occupy to how they behaved when Black Lives Matter first started in 2014, 2015, to then the George Floyd uprisings of 2020, to the campus crackdowns of this year, you can see that the state only has one tool, and police are that tool. And again, our minds are so colonized that a lot of us still go back in our heads to what would we do without police? It would just be bedlam. And I have to remind you of the most basic fact, which is that police can't stop anything from happening. Okay? It is always to respond to something that has already happened, which means what? The police didn't stop it from happening. No, what they are and always will be is the militarized arm of the state. They are the constant threat of violence to be enacted upon you if you do something too far outside of what is allowed by our society. And at best, if this is a democracy or a republic, at best, it is a permissive tyranny. I think it is a fascism and has been since its inception, and you can argue that all day long, but at very least, it is a permissive tyranny. Maybe they will allow you to say whatever you want to say, but when you do too much, you get the boot. Do not let May 13th or what happened to MOVE be forgotten historically. Bring it up every time someone mentions what the state will or will not do, what police will or will not do to its own citizens. You can show them pictures. It is not arguable. It is something that people lived through and remember. It is not so old that the fog of memory can have consumed it. If nothing else, you could be acceptable collateral damage in their war against any group that is actually trying to make change in this country.